Hello, welcome to Yates Makes. So today we are doing this, a split colour, split tone, stencil effect painting, but without the need for Photoshop, without the need for tricky kind of stencil cutting, and without the need for spray cans, all of which are quite specialist equipment. We're going to be using Snapseed, which is a photography app, free one, fantastic for all sorts of stuff. I've just found a use for it using the double exposure tool to create this kind of split tone effect and have a lot of control about where you have your darks, lights and your mids. Alright, let's get to it. Okay, first things first, you're going to need to go ahead and download Snapseed. As I said, it's free, loads of stuff you can do with it. Then you're going to need a photo. So here's the photo I'm working with. It's got a fairly strong light source from one side, which is going to help us split those tones. Once you've opened the app, open your image and then look for the little pencil tool on the right hand side. This is going to reveal our tools palette. First thing we're going to do is apply a black and white filter to this. So there's a number of presets along the bottom. I've gone with the film filter. Okay, we're now going to go check the little tick, apply that filter, back to your tools menu with the pencil, top left, tune image. We're going to try and scroll up and down to reveal the palette for brightness, contrast, shadows, highlights, etc. Then by swiping left and right to increase or decrease the intensity of that filter, we're going to try and increase the blacks, increase the whites, but hold on to a small amount of your grey mid-tone, because that you'll need as a guide when we move on to the next step, which is to paint in, using a mask, your mid-tone. So back to layers palette, we're going to go double exposure. You're then going to get taken to this screen. Go to open image. Now you are going to need, saved in your camera roll, a grey and a black background. You literally search for that on the internet, you'll find them. There you see mine. Ignore the pictures of my son Sushi and Theresa May. First we're going to use the grey background. Now it will appear at kind of half opacity, so click on transparency and increase it almost to the top. Now the next step is to paint this grey layer in as a mask where we want it. So look up at the top, arrow, little paper stack, open it, click on view edits. That will take you to a little menu at the bottom right where you can see all your filters to date stacked up. Now open and then click on the little mask icon, the square. Now we're going to paint in by two finger expanding to zoom in, and then with the brush set on 100, which you can see down at the bottom there, I'm going to paint in everywhere I want grey in my image. So you can see now why I kept some of the grey in my contrast edit at the start. So this is very much about judging how you want to simplify this image into 3 different tones. Now you'll notice the brush seems quite clumsy, especially when it's zoomed out. Don't worry, you can refine it by setting that brush down to 0. Watch what I do here on the lip. Down to 0, and I am going to rub out or unmask to kind of refine and sharpen that edge. So you can get as precise as you want if you keep flicking between 0 on the brush and 100 to refine that mask. So I'm now going about my image, simplifying those tones, back to double exposure, and I'm going to import my black. Again, slider on the opacity right up, expand view edits, access your mask icon in the view edit stack, and I'm going to start painting in my black. Now as I paint my black, obviously that's a layer over my grey, so I can to an extent refine my grey layer by painting over it. I hope that makes sense. So here you can see I'm blocking in areas that I know I want black. Okay, I've got it on sped up sort of mode here, so you know, I'm rushing through it, but you get the idea. Now the great thing about working this way is at any point I want to, I can go back into my edit stack, as I'm going to do here. I'm going to access my grey layer, mask icon, and I can just keep painting my greys. So you can build up your image by flicking between these two toned layers, mid-tones and darks. Of course, if you want to go for more tones, you just need two values of grey, a dark and a light, plus your black, and you can make this as complex as you want it. Right, when you're done, be sure to save, export a copy with permanent changes. You'll find that option down on the bottom right of your Snapseed screen. Then we're ready to print a copy out for the painting stage. Okay, I'm going to use the grid method here to scale up my image. So the first thing I'm doing is just laying a very simple 3cm grid over my printout of my image. Be sure to put two sets of corresponding marks so that when you join them, you know your grid and your lines are parallel and your image isn't going to go all kind of skew with and wonky. Okay, last set of marks just coming on now. Join those up and I'm ready to start thinking about my mixed media background and the surface that I'm going to work on. So for this project I decided on a piece of plywood, and the next steps I've sped up considerably because obviously they took a while, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm using some acrylic paints, rollers, brushes, just getting a bit of colour, kind of broken, fractured colour. I'm applying some collage pieces just with Pritt stick or glue stick, and then peeling back once dry to get some ripped textures, layering up some more colour, some orange over my pink. Going to be quite a sort of bright poppy background. Right, I thought I'd have a go. I've never tried jelly printing or transferring an image with a Gelliplate onto an acrylic and wood surface before. So here we go. If you've never tried it, get a Gelliplate, they're well useful. Got a glossy magazine here with some text on the other side, and I'm just pulling that print off, flipping it over, placing it. We'll see if it works. Pretty faint, but I need a faint background. So you might not have a Gelliplate, you can just collage on, you can hand draw, whatever you like. Okay, again, some more Gelliplate printing, bit of the same background colour but some blue mixed in, an old letter stencil I had lying around. That's going to hopefully transfer a very faint coloured layer with some text in there. Again, I'm going to be covering these up, so they're just going to sit underneath. The idea is to build up layers. Right, useful tip, tissue paper is so good for collage, but it's a nightmare to cut out. So I'm folding up a load of tissue paper, sandwiching it inside a sheet of photocopier paper, cutting out the shape I need. I get multiples, loads of them all at once, and they're much easier to cut than the raw tissue. Applying these with acrylic gel medium, it's great, dries transparent, fixes them perfectly, doesn't rip them. So you can see my dot pattern. Now Letraset, you might have it, you might not. I've got a stack of the stuff lying around. What else have I tried? Just masking off, adding some coloured areas to you know, the top of the image there, mixing up a bit of yellow with some white, getting a little blend. Pull that mask off. Right, some more Letrasetting. I kind of made a bit of a mess of this, truth be told. The idea was to put some Promarkers over this, then use some masking tape to pull off the Letraset, leaving the shape. I didn't let the Promarker dry for long enough and it kind of just bled everywhere. It kind of worked there, but you can see not great. Right, some corrugated cardboard work, straight on with the roller, stamped on, so easy, looks great, more layers. Right, I wanted a kind of illustrative area to kind of contrast with my ripped and fractured kind of textures and colours. So I've gone with a pair of scissors, which is then going to have like a pattern line running right through the image from top to bottom. So I'm using my white Posca pen. They're fantastic. Get a nice opaque controlled mark, and there you go, there's my kind of illustrative work running over my image. Right, last little touch is a kind of big graphic outlined N. Give me one further layer. Right, now onto the grid that I need, which is going to be a 4cm grid in order to transfer my portrait image. So again, same principles as before, 2 sets of corresponding marks, make sure things are parallel, and I'm off. If you've never tried the grid technique before, very simple. You literally go square by square, as I'm doing here. Use your kind of center points, your thirds points as references, and you break that image down into small manageable chunks. Helps you achieve a good level of precision, which for this is just going to make it much simpler, much more precise. So mixing colours, I'm going to start with my darkest areas. So I've gone for a dark colour but not black, almost black, but some blue in there, some green, a bit of white as well. So painting in, the great thing about this technique that you're not going to get with spray cans is, of course, you're using a brush. You can have some quite broken brush marks, you can have some dry brushed areas, especially near the edges of your image where they kind of fade out into the background. I think that looks really effective. In with the midtones, I've got kind of a warmish bluey grey colour for my midtone. Nice small brush, you just enjoy painting them in. One thing you will need to do is probably refine your edges of your shapes a little from the transfer. So as you're drawing out with the grid, think ahead. So for example, on the hat, where I had some quite sort of rough looking grey marks that I'd done with my double exposure mask on Snapseed, I've kind of really changed the shape of those as I've drawn them out, just to make them more interesting shapes, not quite so blobby. But again, as part of the kind of learning process, part of the challenge of this technique, each stage you kind of adapt to what you need. There you go, working on the hat now, adding a few little marks in that weren't actually in my Snapseed edited mask. You know, finishing touches really, just to break up some of that negative space or lightest tone. As I said before, break up those brush marks where you're near the edge, and won't be long before you've block filled everything, added a bit of character to some of your brush strokes, and you'll be done. There you go, there's the finished painting. Loads to absorb and enjoy in there. If you are interested, I have done a lot of stenciling like this one, which is using more traditional techniques, Photoshop, cut stencils, spray paint. Drop me some comments below if you want to see a tutorial on that. Happy to make it. Take it easy, hope you've enjoyed this. See you in the next video. Bye bye.